Good evening and welcome to Mindful Money Moment. Thank you so much for joining me this evening for a special edition of Remembering Black Wall Street. This is 100 years after the fact, where we're remembering and giving honor to those who lost their lives and their businesses, an entire community that was destroyed behind hate and fear and such an unnecessary situation and circumstance. However, what we're doing is remembering this situation because of how it has affected the community and how it affects us, even though it hasn't been promoted very highly, very publicly. It is something that is an underlying truth that has been affecting the Black community for the last 100 years. It's not the only incident of its kind. If you look through history, you'll also find out and do some research on the Red Summer, and that was in Chicago, I believe, in 1916. And that year, from early spring all the way through the fall, where there were a number of killings and businesses also being destroyed, similar to what happened during Black Wall Street. But these kinds of events are what has taken its toll on the Black community. But then also how this affects us is because the underlying effect holds us as women back from being able to make the progress that we could. It is a situation where many of us can relate to it in terms of abuse. When you recognize that there's a whole community of people who have been abused in this way and are continuing to respond or to have experience with the trauma behind that. It is absolutely pertinent for us to pay attention to what's going on. Yesterday, I gave some highlights in terms of the history. And today we're going to talk about, where we are presently in the Black community with our business development and how we can take steps to move forward, growing and continuing to thrive. Because even though those events happened so many years ago, and it has had its effect, it did not completely dismiss the efforts that we have had as entrepreneurs and continuing to grow and to thrive as a community overall. And so we want to focus in on, again, those items or those topics, those tips, those strategies that we can use to continue to grow ourselves in terms of the Black business community, and focusing in on how that affects us, especially as Black women. And so I'm bringing in with me today two special guests who are going to share this information with us. We have one who is Jodiann Bigby, and she is a brand strategist and empowerment speaker. Jodiann is best known for speaking life for a living. So from live and virtual stages for diverse audiences, as well as the dynamic strategy sessions she's led for her clients and campaigns. She's celebrated as a woman to watch in business by W Hotels, Gerber Events Group. Jodiann has spent the past decade working with individuals and businesses alike to achieve their marketing and communications goals through her consultancy. And so that is where we're looking for her guidance and some strategies, some real tips that we can use as women in business to create that fundamental foundational level for us to continue to grow forward on from this point, and recognizing the underlying challenges that may be affecting us even from an event such as this. My second guest is Jasmine Richardson, and she is a corporate finance professional with 20 years of accounting, audit, and risk experience and a degree in accounting, economics, and finance. She is active in the community as a board member, mentor, and advocate of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This year, she was honored as a Maryland Top 100 Woman by the Daily Record. So congratulations to Jasmine for that. And she's here as a career consultant. She has given much advice to women in our community about how to structure their careers, what strategies they could use to get ahead, whether they were working, for a small business or working for major corporations, being able to understand how we can hone in our skills to be the most benefit, not only to ourselves, but serving our community. And so that is what we're going to discuss on this edition of Mindful Money Moment. And I'm so grateful to have these ladies here with me. So welcome, Jodiann, and welcome, Jasmine. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Absolutely.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And so as we talk about remembering Black Wall Street, ladies, there is so much underlying here. Now, on this platform, I discuss with our audience how we can be mindful about how our emotions affect our money management, right? And so there's always going to be here that underlying feeling, that you have when these kinds of events have emerged from history. For myself personally, I've just learned about these events within the last couple of years, and I know a lot of folks who have just been exposed to this over the last couple of years themselves. Like, yesterday I was watching the news and there was a gentleman who mentioned that, he's in his 60s now, but he only learned about Black Wall Street and the destruction that occurred in Tulsa just 30 years ago.
But that's not an accident. That was right, because it was purposely hidden. All mention of it was hidden. There was a concerted effort to make sure that was not, that history was covered up and that it was never taught. So that's on purpose. I believe last year is the first time it was taught in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? So if it's not even taught there where it happened, then everybody else, good luck. It's a personal journey of discovery. So.
Absolutely. And it has been quite a journey. Even this year for me, watching, from the sidelines, watching from here at home, the events that have been going on in Tulsa, there's been quite a stir with those who have gathered in that area just to bring more attention to the event, especially on this 100-year anniversary. It's like it's been 100 years, but it's like yesterday. Because we're just remembering. And that means that there are wounds that we need to address and to make sure that we're paying attention to the residue or the residual trauma that can come from something like this.
Right. But sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's residue, but it's also incredibly apparent that what people also should look at is 100 years later, the racial wealth gap is not only the same, but somewhat less, right? In terms of, if you look at 60 years after emancipation, what Black people were able to do in Greenwood, and it was built by Black people for Black people. And then you think about 100 years later, where's Greenwood? Where is their Greenwood replica? Where are communities? Where's the Black Wall Street now, right? So that's a question that we have to ask. Why was it easier 60 years ago for a neighborhood to have that type of wealth, to have over 70 Black-owned businesses to be together? I believe they said it was over a year and a half before the dollar went out of the neighborhood, right? Wherein today, I think that's probably can be measured in hours or minutes, depending
6 hours
on Amazon caps.
6 hours to be exact. Our dollars stay in our community for 6 hours. That's the max.
Exactly. So I think that if you don't have to look far to see, unfortunately, the legacy of that destruction. There's a lot of tentacles from that act from 100 years ago that still has our community well within its grasp, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Very true. So addressing that for us, it means healing. It means being able to recognize where we are and what we need to understand in order to overcome, because ignoring that kind of pain can be overwhelming. And for those of us who have experienced, trauma and the results of abuse, we know that, you can't ignore it. You can't stuff it down, because eventually it's going to be like a champagne bottle. The top is going to pop.
Right.
And that's going to be it. And so we have to address those issues. And so what today, our goal is to make sure that we are putting forth some strategies and some tips for these ladies to be able to implement. There are many of our viewers who are women business owners. And we know that Black women is the number one growing group of entrepreneurs in the United States. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, we want to make sure that we're focusing in on what we can do in order to make sure that these women are getting the support that they need, so that not only can they grow their businesses or start them up, but continue to maintain them so that they can thrive. We got to get in survival mode.
I agree. And I certainly defer to the other guests to chime in. I don't want to take over the reaction, but I would say that we owe so much to them, because they were the first iteration of Wakanda, right?
Yeah. They were the prototype. Absolutely.
Exactly. And so we draw so much inspiration to see what could be done, right? And it didn't require external validation. It didn't require anything but some land and opportunity. And then from that, they supported each other, right? And so from the ashes, although there was so much destruction, there were people left, right? So I often say, you have to understand, if this area isn't for me. There were some that tried to stay, try to fight. Obviously, there's a lot of work that's going on, but a lot of others migrated. So there was like a diaspora that happened, and they built their businesses somewhere else, right? So I do think that this tragedy, and it was horrific. If you think about that, America would bomb its own citizens, and the trauma from that ripples and waves in many ways, but there's also the incredible testimony of those that moved away and rebuilt their businesses. Because you know what, you can burn everything I have, but I know how I did it the first time. If I did it before, I can do it again, right? Exactly. And so I think that that's a lesson that we can take from that. No matter what your situation is, you may have to start all over from absolutely nothing. But if you did it before, you can do it again, because where there's life, there's hope, right? So absolutely. I know that others have thoughts on this, but I definitely wanted to make sure that we honor those that survived that tragedy and thrived in spite of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we have, just to bring to point what you're saying, there are many who left that community. From what I understand today, that those who were remaining in that community actually live north of the city at this point in time. There's not a huge conglomerate in Greenwood. They've, unfortunately, some systemic things have prevented them from rebuilding that area in the same fashion that it was as a bustling, center of business. But there are Black businesses that are there. And so we're encouraged that if we go into that area, obviously support those businesses, but then also to recognize that there is a certain level of poverty with those who were left behind, who had to move outside of the city and then now figure out how they were going to survive. And oftentimes those who are left behind are the ones who can't afford to migrate. Exactly. And that's the challenge. And so making sure that we're keeping abreast and understanding how can we support those in our community who need that support the most, and where can we make sure that we're putting our dollars to feed back into Black businesses so that we can continue to grow and thrive in the same way that they did during 1921 before this incident even happened. And so Jodiann, I come to you with some questions about, how do we, as a brand strategist, how do we pay attention to how we're developing our businesses from startup? There are some women out here who have just an idea and they've been questioning, oh, I don't know, if I should do it. Oh, give me another year,
I hear it all the time. Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I'm scared, blah, blah, blah. What would you say to that woman, and why should she put aside that fear in order to express her confidence?
Well, I want to bring something that my fellow guests just highlighted, a takeaway from the people of Tulsa, the people of Black Wall Street that survived, those that rebuilt. The fact that they were able to do it again was because they owned their process.
Yes.
So even whether this is your first business or you're starting again with another venture, There's something about documenting your process. Process is legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think to those who built wealth through farming, there was they understood the land. They understood when it was time to plant. They understood when it was time to harvest. And they whether they recognized it and documented it or not, they owned a process. And that is what caused them to flourish. Literally the land to flourish, but as well as the family, the community that depended on what was produced on that land. That principle translates to entrepreneurship in the here and now. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, even as, understanding the power of processes, the power of systems, oftentimes we feel overwhelmed, especially for someone who's just starting. They're in startup mode, not even startup. They haven't started yet. They're very much in dream up mode. Like, I have this idea. I have a dream, right?
Yeah.
And they get overwhelmed by where to start. So oftentimes it's not a matter of reinventing the wheel. It's about taking the uniqueness of what you bring to the market and plugging it into an existing system. So whether that be if you're doing e-commerce, that's something as simple as setting up a Shopify. Not that I'm necessarily promoting that particular platform. It was just the first one that popped into my head. Mm-hmm. If you're looking to create online courses, you want to build your wealth, build your net worth by sharing your wisdom, sharing your knowledge, and imparting it to others who want to and need to learn from you. It may be as simple as setting up a Thinkific, setting up a Kajabi, and putting your knowledge online so that you're not limited to your immediate geographical area. You can be reaching and teaching across the globe. So again, maybe what you're teaching may be new or the product itself may be unique, but that doesn't mean that, the nuts and bolts of getting it out to the market has to be something brand new. And that's where plugging into a system and a process is to your benefit. So that is just a word of advice to those of you who are just getting started.
Absolutely. And so it makes sense for us to review our history, because there is a blueprint that exists in that history. If we see how those businesses were initially developed, how they even set up the town with the number of businesses that they had. I heard there were over 600 businesses that were destroyed during that, that domestic terrorist attack. Is what we really have to identify that it was. But in that process of destroying those businesses, there were lives, there was property taken, there were lives that were, that were lost in that process. So for us looking back, it's recognizing, okay, those lives were not lost in vain, because they left a legacy for us. There is legacy in the history of what they built before they were taken from this planet.
I think the legacy is also that it's possible, right? I think there is it's not really a mystery why the Black Panther movie made over $1 billion, because it provided a different vision. Yeah. And unfortunately, we've been waiting 100 years to know, hey, guess what? This was done here, not in fantasy land. Like, we actually did collaboratively work together and have this incredible community. And it wasn't the only community, and it wasn't, unfortunately, the only massacre. But at the time, the insurance claims were over $1 million, almost $2 million, which is $27 million of today's money, according to the New York Times. Yeah. And so just think 100 years ago, Black folks had created that much opportunity, and they were creating generational wealth, because it was over 1,200 homes destroyed as well, right? Yeah. And so what does home ownership do for you? A lot of times, if your grandparent has a home, that means your parent either had a home to live in, they didn't have to pay rent right away, or they had extra money to go to college. So that meant when you were up, of course you were going to college, and maybe you got some money for your down payment, or maybe you don't even have to worry about that yet. You can just stay at the house and do your startup in the basement, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you rob that and you multiply that generation over generation over generation, there's a lot of big names that are known for their generational wealth in this country that we don't, a lot of names are missing because they were robbed. So what can we do? I love what you said, Jodiann, like start from here. So let's say LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
So LinkedIn is easy, it's free. Why don't you can position yourself as a subject matter expert in the area that you want to be recognized in, that you want your business to be known for. You don't have to always come up with original content, but you should research the industry that you're in, identify leaders in that industry, and maybe you are sharing their content with your spin on it, right? So people are getting to know you for a particular subject area. And in the meanwhile, you are also introducing yourself to a new audience. So as you're building your business, you are also building a reputation. And then you're on things like mindful money moments, right? And so you're able to talk about the things that you're doing and what are you doing? You're introducing people to you, and you're introducing them into your interests, and you're telling them, hey, come follow me here. And so you're organically building a following. If you are building a brand, remember in the beginning, you are your brand. So consistently represent it, be clear about what that is. And that's totally okay if in the beginning you're not quite sure, but make sure you are intentional about how you represent yourself and the things that you're sharing, and that it is welcoming a customer, an investor, or an advisor. And if you work in that way, it'll come together. But you don't have to have it all figured out to start, but you certainly can't grow until you start, right?
Absolutely.
So absolutely.
Absolutely. So it's about one of those things that you mentioned in the early part of the show, which is hope. And it's because we have that previous example of what already existed that we can have the hope of knowing that we can recreate that, and we can even do it better the way that we put our own twist on it, with our education, with our technology. And there are so many opportunities today that did not exist during that time, where we in the Black community, if we take advantage of those opportunities, then we will be able to come together to grow and to thrive. But that means being able to take on a community perspective. That means working together. That means bonding together with those who do the same thing that you do. And instead of competing with them, completing with them.
I would also challenge as well that, I always talk about Walmart versus Kmart. There's advantages to being first to market. You get market share. But you know what? When you're not the first to market, you don't have all the stressors. So you can come in and figure out how to do it quicker, better, faster. And maybe you could be a disruptor, right? So I always say, study the leaders in your industry and figure out, hey, can I be a supplier? Right? Because maybe I don't need to have the headaches of being the big dog in this area, but maybe I can carve out a niche for me, and I can be the supplier to the big dog, and I have one big customer versus having to have 20 small customers. You figure it out. But I definitely think that realizing that there is plenty at the table for everybody to eat, and not being competitive is always the best mindset to have, because there's something for everyone to grow. And if you can figure out how you can collaborate, you'll be able to make multiple streams of income, and people will look at you as a resource. And if you're thought of as a resource, when opportunity comes a knocking, your name is the first one that they want to see on the other side of the door.
Absolutely. And we have to keep in mind that pie is worth $1.5 trillion in our community. That's a big old pie.
That's a gigantic pie. Yes.
That's a big old pie. And so being able to structure ourselves so that we are working together, even if you have someone who is setting up a similar business to yours. So even on this platform, I'm a financial advisor, but I bring in financial advisors because there is something different that everybody can contribute to the conversation. And the more that more conversation that we have around these topics, the more interest then we will be able to build up, and the more ideas that will be able to be shared through that interest and through that conversation. And we will be able to develop ourselves so that we can continue to spark that hope, but then also create a strategy. Because hope is great and having an idea is amazing. But if you don't put something on paper as a plan and then take action, then there's nothing going to follow up behind it. So we want to make sure that we do that. Absolutely. Go ahead, Jasmine.
No, I was just going to ask Jodiann, how does she help her clients cultivate confidence to do that, because I find a lot of people asking, oh my gosh, I gotta make a business plan. They're so intimidated. And I was just like, start with a pen on a paper. Don't like, there's a template, there's all these things, but you can break it down simply. But I found that people are always, they're so intimidated by just the words business plan. So I was interested to know kind of like how you help cultivate that confidence.
Sure. So it's a combination of mindset and simplified frameworks. So, and I believe that you touched on this a bit before, but mindset is where it all starts. We can have the most fabulous, well-researched business plan that could grab, the best venture capitalists that are ready to throw money at you. But if you do not have the confidence that you can do what's on paper, then it's all for naught. And so mindset is really the best place to start. And what I've come to find, even with the entrepreneurs that I work with, and especially women, it comes out in the discovery sessions as we're going through the process of really unpacking what their idea is, what it is that they're looking to launch. If we're looking at startups in particular, over time, I've developed the ability to hear between the lines, right? We talk about reading between the lines, hear between the lines, hearing those cues of the lack of confidence. And my approach is very direct. When I hear it, we deal with it right there and then, because if we don't tackle it in those moments where there's that uncertainty or that comparison, thinking that you need to compete or that there isn't enough for you in the market, if we don't address them in those moments, it becomes a small thing that becomes a large issue as you go down the line. So it really is ideally in the early stages, starting to address it in a way that's gentle, of course, especially if you're working with someone who is brand new, who's never started a business before. I'm sure many who are in your audience, Kavette, they have this grand idea. They know that there's potential there, but again, they're lacking the confidence sometimes because they've never done it before. So that's one side of it, is the mindset. But then there's also providing them with the tools and sometimes even the training. Sometimes you have to be taught. With competence comes confidence. When you know what you're doing, you feel good about it. You exude that confidence. And so something as simple as plugging them into certain trainings, development programs. There's a slew of them out there, especially for women of color, because so many of us have that entrepreneurial spirit, as you emphasized earlier on. But we just need that push. We need the knowledge, something that's going to flip the switch on the confidence side of things, so that we can really move forward with the business and really begin to build that generational wealth that we have more than enough potential to do. So absolutely.
And your mention of that is perfect timing, because this weekend I actually have a workshop coming up on June 5th. I want to say January. I don't know why. On June 5th. This Saturday at 10 a.m. on mariamorelife.com. You can register for that event. There's going to be a 1-hour seminar. It's called Get Out of Debt and Retire Tax-Free. In that seminar, you will be educated about how the banking system works. You will learn about how to count your interest. What is in your best interest? Is it credit interest? Is it bank interest? What's going to work best for you, and how to get your money truly to work for you so that you can fund your future. Because that's what I found, that so many of us as women, regardless of race or ethnicity, 85% of us are not thinking about retirement or planning for it.
I'm very surprised to hear that. Sorry.
85%.
I believe it.
All the time.
85%.
I believe it.
But there's only 15% who are actually thinking about it. When I read that Worthy report, I was like, what in the world? Like, how are only 15% thinking about it? That doesn't mean they have a plan.
It goes back to mindset. It goes back to mindset.
Absolutely. For being able to understand. So if you don't have the confidence of having done it before, then you've got to go to a place first to get educated. And just like you said, once we gain that competence, then we will gain the confidence that we need to move forward, to take action. and to put a plan in place so that we can be secure for our futures. And that's where this really starts. Now, for us, it's a little different because when you think about the Black community, there have been so many things that have been undermined. Then that trauma response comes in where you'll find yourself holding back because you're like, okay, so this has been done before, and then I saw what they did before, and so is it even worth my time putting it together? Is that something that I should focus in on? And that's where the whole idea of hope comes into play, and where we need to really build ourselves up and build up each other through encouragement. There's not one successful person that I've seen who has not been encouraged by someone somewhere. And it's because they've been told that they could do it, that they believe that they would do, and they would do it, and so they through that process.
Yeah. I definitely agree. And I would say, even like from a career perspective, there's entrepreneurial spirit that's should be cultivated. Not everyone is going to follow that path. Some people are pursuing corporate careers, and confidence is an issue there, and they need oftentimes there's a sponsor, there's a mentor, there's an advisor, but particularly the breakout between women and men, which I keep hearing the theme of, particularly with women, right? So I think we've all heard with the Confidence Code, the book Hattie K put out, that men tend to go for jobs when they're about 50% or so qualified. Yeah. And women need to be almost 80, 90%.
110.
Right. Exactly. Right. And that's because men are like, hey, I can figure it out. And I would extrapolate that over to the same thing with retirement. Right. So maybe you haven't thought about retirement because you're intimidated by the process, but I would look at it as a GPS. At some point, as they used to say, Lord's willing, the creek don't rise, it's coming, right? And so I'm here, it's there. What's the roadmap between there? And if you don't know how to navigate that space, the best thing you can do is get informed and have the confidence of somebody who with 50% of the skills, who says, I'll figure it out when I get there. Because knowledge is power, and Absolutely. A lot of it is, and it's available, right? And so just go and be around the conversation. It'll sink in. Maybe you don't figure it all out the first time you hear it. You don't understand everything, but if you keep listening and keep investing, that will happen. And I do think that encouragement is important. We have to support each other. Sometimes when we don't know something, we're nervous to kind of share that we don't know. We don't feel comfortable, because we think we should know, right? So I think the more that we talk about, I didn't know. I remember when I got started, I didn't know. And people hearing that, it kind of encourages other people to share the same. So I really love this forum. The way that not only that you support your audience, but how you support your guests, and hopefully encouraging others to take that first little leap of faith, to invest in yourself, right? Because if you want people to invest in you, you got to be the first investor, right?
Absolutely. And, we talk about that fear or that lack of confidence that we have. One question for you, Jodiann, what is the tip? So when you hear that lack of confidence, what does that sound like? So, okay, we're talking to the woman now who has not had an advisor. She maybe can't even afford a coach or a consultant. Right. Okay. But she needs to get into a position where she's built her confidence up enough so that she can start figuring it out enough to the point where she can get there, because eventually she knows in her business, she's going to need a coach. She's going to need a consultant. She's going to need a financial advisor. But sometimes you've got to build a foundation without all of that support. And so what does she need to hear in herself and to say to herself in order to kind of be built up in that process before she gets to get the support from someone else?
What I would say, I'm actually going to, before I get into what she should say to herself, if this is resonating with anyone that's in your audience that's watching, and they're like, oh my gosh, why is she in my business? This is me right now. A practical step that you can take right now is 2 words: YouTube University. There is a wealth of knowledge, numerous, countless experts that you may not be able to get on their calendar. You may not be able to have FaceTime with them, but you can glean from the wealth of their knowledge simply by looking at what they've already put out for free.
Yeah.
I can even think of one of my first business coaches. How I found out about him. He connected with an online influencer that I followed at the time, who was very much about female empowerment and entrepreneurship and that sort of thing. And her whole campaign was, hey, I want to share my business coach with you. And we're going to do a free series, just opt in, plug in, and get the good stuff. And I remember after the first video, and mind you, I was actually at a point in my business where I remember saying to God, like, God, I'm done. Yes, you gave me this business idea. I am done. If you don't do something, I'm out of here. Like, I'm just going to go back and get a job, and that'll just be that. And I mean, entrepreneurship, maybe it's just not for me.
Can I say that we've all been there? As an entrepreneur, if you haven't been there, you're not an entrepreneur.
And or you haven't been in business long enough.
Let me just back that up. If you haven't been there, you're not a woman. Okay? Because we have all run into those situations. Absolutely.
Yes, as the elders would say, keep on living. You'll get there, right? And that was the point that I was at. And but that's the beautiful thing about it. When you put it out there, the answers come. The student was ready, so the teacher appeared. And not even maybe 2 days later, if so long, I got this email from her about her wanting to share her coach with us, her network, her audience, similar to what you're doing for these ladies here. And I remember maybe 5 or 10 minutes into the first video saying to myself, I can't believe he's giving this away for free. I can't believe he's giving this away for free. When I say mindset shift, strategies, everything that he downloaded in 10 minutes of the first video, and it's a 3-video series. By the second video, I was like, I know they're going to be selling a program. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care what I mean, of course, within legal and moral boundaries, but whatever I have to do to get into this program, when they announce it, I need to be among the first in. And so said, so done. And it transformed my business. So I say that to say, oftentimes, even if I hadn't had the funds, by simply implementing what he released in that free course, that free series, that was enough to make the difference. Really, enrolling in the course was kind of the icing on the cake, because there was the community and all these different things, as I'm sure, that's something that you provide, Kavette, even with the resources that you provide for your audience. But sometimes it's just starting with get in how you fit in. We can all log on to YouTube. In fact, you should be watching this on YouTube.com or Facebook or whatever platform you prefer. But Kavette is offering this, connecting you with the experts in her. I'm speaking to your audience now. So she's connecting you with the experts that's in her network. The people who have the decades of experience, centuries of combined experience in the very things that you want to learn about. And so sometimes we go seeking after someone's time, because we believe that, okay, maybe if I'm in their face, I'll be more motivated to do what they say. But if you're not going to do anything with the free stuff, then you shouldn't waste your time or waste theirs by trying to get on their calendar if you're not going to be a woman of action. And so something as simple as, tracking down those experts online, seeing what they're already putting out there. So often they offer a wealth of knowledge completely for free or at a very, very nominal cost. And by implementing that and implementing that into your business and generating the income from that, then you can move forward with investing in the full price program. But start where you are and implement where you are. Build that into your character, the consistency, the application, the implementation, and that's when you really see your business grow and take off.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jodiann, for sharing that. That is absolutely essential, absolutely key for us to build that first foundational level before we're able to make the progress. And we have to build up not only our confidence, but our activity. We have to be confident enough knowing that we've taken action and built a routine. And these ladies know I talk all the time about having a daily routine. We get up in the morning, we do our journaling, we do our reading, we make sure we exercise, and we have some time for meditation to bring some peace into our lives before we get out into the crazy world. because we need to keep it together. You know, we've got enough going on within ourselves not to take that out, you know, on the world. And so we want to be able to be value added, but we also want to be open enough so that we're able to take the value and be poured into by the resources that we have available to us. If we're not open, if we're, you know, keeping ourselves bunched up and closed up and are, you know, ignoring ourselves, then we won't be able to take advantage of the opportunities right in front of us. And so sometimes that starts not just with a business, but that starts with our jobs. And so what Jasmine was talking about in terms of building our networks on LinkedIn, being able to pay attention to how we're being educated, you know, what are you reaching out for? So that you will be more confident in your education. And so, Jasmine, what are the steps that you recommend for these ladies to take before they get their business going? You know, I always say, you know, be entrepreneurial, period, whether you're a business owner or you're an employee. But what does that mean from your perspective in their being entrepreneurial as an employee?
So as an employee, I always say you should be in the driver's seat of your career. You should not be a bystander waiting for somebody to make something happen for you, right? Yeah. I coach people very seriously on how to use the performance evaluation process as really that is the tool for your personal growth. And so if you're waiting for somebody to tell you, hey, this opportunity will be available for you in 7.5 months if you do these 2 things and talk to these 4 people, then you're gonna be waiting a long time. So I give a couple of tips. One is to network across your organization, not just up your organization, because you need to have people talking about you that may be involved in projects or know about opportunities that your boss doesn't know about, right? But because skills are transferable. So it might not be an exact fit from experience, but you can do those skills. So make sure that people across your organization know what your interests are, where your capabilities are, so that they can be like, I wonder if she'd be interested in something. In career and in community, one thing that I have found to be actually the most valuable thing I've ever done, which is to serve. Every connection I've ever had, every opportunity, I can usually trace back to service. I've raised my hand. I wasn't looking for somebody else to do it. I said, hey, I'll do it. And because of that, I have made connections and relationships with people who then, I didn't know it when I started, but they ended up opening doors for me. And also when you work like that, it's called like palms up networking, where first I offer before I ask for you to give me something. And so you don't have a motive when you're meeting people. You're just learning them organically. And that's important because no one wants to feel like they're being used, right? People want to have genuine connections, authenticity. So I definitely say if there's an opportunity to serve, definitely do that. And thirdly, I tell people to be a problem solver. What is the headaches in your department, in your division, in your company, right? And once you understand what those headaches are, don't be a person that also complaining about it. Be the person that has a solution, right? And when you have a solution, don't talk about it, be about it. Send an email to say, hey, I've been thinking about this. This is, I think, an option to address it. I've kind of done a couple of research. It will cost about this much, or it'll probably only take me this long to work on it. So what you have done is basically said, here's the plan. I'm the person. Give me the opportunity. Put me in, coach, right? But you're making it easy. So I wouldn't be the person that's just always saying, hey, well, I could have done it better. Well, prove it. How would you have done it better, right? And then I would also say, don't start thinking about your evaluation at the end of the year. In January, if your evaluation is in December, that's your GPS. What conversation do you want to have in December? You should be mapping out the road to that conversation in January, and you better have some pit stops in March. You need to have a mid-year conversation in June to say, hey, I'm trying to get here. Are we still on course to get here? And how can you know that you're going to get there? Because everybody know where you're going. It ain't a secret mission. The manager know where you want to go. The colleagues know where you want to go because you're trying to get skills to help you get to there. So it is a no-brainer She want that role. She has been all practically doing it already. At the end of the year, what she need to be telling me is, if there is any reason why I'm not getting the role, I need to know why. And then, you know what, if they tell you why you're not getting it, then you know what, it's their responsibility to develop you into whatever skills they say you don't have, because it's your job to let them know what you want to do, but it's their job to help you to get there. So these are just a few things that I think anybody can take. I don't care if you're just starting out working as a grocery store clerk, or if you're starting out as an analyst, or it's your first year or third year in the business. And lastly, I just want to say, maybe you've been in a role for a long time and you want to do something else. And I want to just go back to what we said earlier. Just because you've been doing this for 10 years or 12 years, and now there's a role opening somewhere else, and you're like, I'm not really qualified for that. Do an informational interview and let people know that you're interested, learn about the role, tell them what's transferable, and throw your hat in the ring. I'm telling you, it's never too late to pivot, but you just need a plan, and you don't have to do it by yourself. So I hope those things are helpful. I didn't mean to take up so much time, but I'm very passionate about this topic.
No, you're perfect. Absolutely. I mean, the only thing I can think about that is that doesn't sound too different from, being a business owner. I mean, when you talk about taking the initiative, as you have to be a good employee, or as we say, a good team member, in order to be an excellent leader.
That's it. And servant leadership is where you're not a good leader if you're not building leaders behind you, right? Absolutely. I'm not a good leader because everybody listens to me. I'm a good leader because if I take a vacation, the mission is still being accomplished.
Absolutely.
Right? So.
Absolutely. And that's what business ownership is about. Sometimes we forget and we think, especially as women, we take on everything ourselves. We got to do every little detail. We got to make sure that, my hands are here, my hands are there. I'm putting on this hat and I'm putting on that hat, and I'm running everything one woman show, but we don't have to do that. If we understand, where our place is and what our role is, how significant it can be for us to be able to contribute to upscaling our entrepreneurship into business ownership, where we can hire people and provide an opportunity for them to learn and grow. Yes. That's what it's about, especially in our community, because that's one of the challenges that have been noted. And I'm going to bring out this statistic. I'm a statistical girl. I love them, because they motivate me. It's like, oh, that pisses me off. I want to make it different. I got to change the numbers, So, when you think about it, there is a statistic that exists. It was stated that Walmart was the comparison that was made to the top 100 businesses in the Black community. The top 100 performing businesses in the Black community have less employees than Walmart.
Combined.
Wow. Combined. And so when we think about the magnitude of that, it's like, okay, wait a minute. How come top 100? What?
Right. But you also have to say, it's mind-boggling, but we also have the opportunity to influence it, because consumers rule the world. So where are we spending our money, right? And
that's it.
Yeah. That's it.
We have to be conscious of where we're putting ourselves in terms of employment. Are we seeking employment with Black businesses? Are we encouraging Black business owners to hire more employees so that they can upscale their businesses? See, sometimes what happens in that residual effect is that we will play ourselves down, because that subconscious lack of confidence will come through. And so what we want to do is to make sure that we are building ourselves up. Encourage. Girl, you can do it. You can absolutely do it without a doubt. You are amazing. You run a household. You got your kids. You making dinner. You making sure everything is straight for your husband if he's there. And it's making sure that you got the assignments at work. You've got your mama that you're caring for. You got your siblings that sometimes call on you. And we're juggling all of these things. We manage all of that effortlessly at home. We can do the same thing in our businesses.
I don't know about you, Joe. I agree with you 100%. And I would say, I started a business while I was working full time. It was a passion, project. And I don't know about you, Jodiann, but the chef, the cook, the bottle washer was a very real reality at first. And then you go out, and in the beginning for me, I did events, and because of the caliber of events that I did, I had a lot of volunteer labor, but when it was time to get work done, they was pretty much doing a bunch of selfies, right? And so what I realized is it wasn't the size of the army, it was the strategy and the skill. And it was also, I had to tell myself, I know how I would do it if I could do it, but since I'm not a clone, I have to accept the 80-20 rule, right? And so I don't know if you're advising your clients on that, about you cannot do it all, right? And so if you say, here's the standards, here's the process, and you teach somebody repeatable processes, reasonably you have a quality service that's being rolled out, but it's not dependent upon you. Your business, every aspect of your business cannot be dependent upon you. You have to focus where you actually are bringing the most value, and outsource, whether it's Upwork or whatever it's called now, where you might be able to gig out some work, or
admin, Fiverr.
Yes.
And I also got interns from the local universities to come in and, help me with some things, because they needed college credit and I needed free labor, right? And so, but I had to let go, right? Because perfectionist is definitely
it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done.
Yes. Absolutely. And the thing is, so often we limit our own growth, and we limit our own possibilities, but we become our own ceiling when we approach our businesses in that way. If you have to think about it in this way, if something were to happen to you, what would happen to the business? If the answer is it would cease to exist because I'm the only one working in the business, then you don't have a business, you have a job. You've created a job for yourself. You've hired yourself out, and you're delivering services in that way, but you've not necessarily created a business per se. And so when we get into the mindset of, again, we touched on this a bit earlier about creating systems, delegating and automating. There are certain things that you can outsource to an actual person, and then there are things that you can outsource to an existing system, software platform that can do the work for you. But it's so important to think in those terms if we're really to build generational wealth, to cultivate assets that we can pass on. We really have to shift our mindset to a mindset of scale. Yes, it may start with just you, absolutely, but are you documenting how you do what you do? Are you documenting the administrative aspects of your business so that when that virtual assistant or the intern or whoever comes along, you have a clear, even before they come along, you can write out the job description. I need you to do these specific things. It's going to require this amount of time. Why do I know that? Because I've done the job myself. I've been doing it myself. I'm ready to offload that work so that I can focus on delivering to my customers, my client, my market, what it is that they're looking, the solutions they're looking to me for, the product, the service, or whatever it may be. And so thinking, again, getting outside of self, it's definitely a stretching of self. It's definitely a mindset shift, a paradigm shift, but it's absolutely necessary if we're talking in terms of building generational wealth through entrepreneurship, through job creation, and not just creation of jobs for ourselves, but for our fellow man. We have to become the number one employers of the Black. We have to become the number one employers in the Black community. It should not be other businesses outside of the Black community. And that's part of the reason why the Black Wall Street was so powerful, was a thriving, burgeoning hub of just creativity, entrepreneurship, and why it was so devastating when it was lost, because I mean, there was so much that went into that. And the reason why the dollar was able to circulate for so long was because the people who were building it were also working there. The people who were working there were also building it. It really was a collective effort. And so we have to get back to that. You made an excellent point, Jasmine, when you said, like, hey, we've done this before. We can do it again. But it's about us tapping into that part of ourselves, to see ourselves as, yes, what's good for me, I need to think of that, of course, but what's good for the whole as well. And those things do not have to be mutually exclusive. I can do well by myself, you know, for myself, for my family, while still also doing well for my community as well.
Absolutely. 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 Thank you so much, Jodiann. You talked about that dollar circulation. I've heard the quote, and I'll find that. I'll make sure that we post these statistics here in the comments for the video for those to want to verify. But I heard the quote that the dollar lasted within that community in Greenwood for a year and a half.
That's incredible.
A year and a half versus the $6 or the 6 hours that is lasting in the Black community as a whole right now. But that is a conscientious effort. It's the same conscientious effort that a woman makes instead of, you know, handling everything for her mama and her siblings and, you know, cooking dinner and, you know, handling her husband and making sure the kids are getting everything done, that she now delegates the responsibility on, okay, if you've got more than one child, the oldest one is going to help with the youngest one.
There you go.
You know, when honey gets home, then you've either, you know, ordered something out or you've pre-made something in the slow cooker so the dinner is already ready and you don't have to put the effort in. You know,
absolutely.
Using, like you said, those systems that help us to work. It is what takes us from being employees or employee entrepreneurs, to being business owners and to being household managers, because that's what we truly are. So as we continue to develop our skills, they're transferable. We just need to be conscious about the effort so that we build our competence, and our confidence will soar through the roof. You know? So thank you, ladies, for coming on and sharing that information. I know that the women who watch this video on the replay, those who have been watching along with us, we've got a couple of comments I'm going to share. Lawana says, hey, Lawana, how are you? D Simpson says, yes. She's co-signing. Lawana says, hello, everyone. Jodiann, she's here to support you. And thank you, Angela, for being here and supporting our points that were being made. So, you know, all of this is very encouraging for us. It is taking an opportunity to look at our history so that we're now able to recognize where we've come to, what we did to get to this point. And now we have an opportunity to choose. We can decide what our future looks like, but we have to make good choices. So in this process, it's about taking in the knowledge, using the tools, and then putting them to action so that we can create the reality of our dreams. And that's what's the opportunity for us all. You know, so I thank you, ladies, for coming again to share with us on this Mindful Money Moment. It's been a wonderful exchange, learning about, you know, branding and building ourselves up as business owners. Ladies, we have always been the foundation of our communities. My quote is, women run the world because we created all of its leaders, right? We can give birth to every single one of them.
I'm telling you, every person on the planet has a woman to thank for their existence and success.
Right.
Every single person.
Right. Absolutely. So let's keep that in mind when we talk about the power that we have. Let's not give that away, but let's keep that power not only for ourselves, but then when we do share that power, we pass that energy on, it is empowerment within our community, amongst ourselves, amongst our sisters. We sometimes face situations where we're struggling, you know, and we don't want to always admit it. But you know, when you see your sister not at her best, you know, take an opportunity to give her that word of encouragement that you know she needs. Give her that boost of energy that you know she needs. Empower her, because you have the power. You know, you have learned, you have experienced, you have struggled, you have survived, and now it is time for us to thrive. And that is where we're definitely on our way to. So let's continue to do that as we continue to be mindful about how our emotions affect our money management. We take these moments every Monday. Now it's Tuesday, so, you know, y'all started something new. But we're going to continue to take these moments, and hopefully not just on Mondays, but every day. You know, take a moment to just be mindful of how your experiences in life are affecting you and what you are choosing to do as a result of that. Let's not just fall into the trauma response, but let's be conscious about making sure that we're choosing well, be discerning about our next step so that we can continue on this journey to self-sufficiency. So thank you, Jasmine, for being here. Thank you so much, Jodiann, for being here. And ladies, feel free to join me this weekend on marandmorelife.com. You can go to register for the event, which is the Good Retire Seminar. And we're going to talk about getting out of debt and retiring tax-free and how you are able to have the power that you need to take the next step on your journey to self-sufficiency. This is your future, and we want to see you thrive. So thank you so much for joining me, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. You know, every Monday we have Mindful Money Moment, and every Wednesday we have Wealthy Women, our private community where we're able to get the personal training, like what Jodiann was talking about earlier, from experts who are coming to give us those strategies and tips that will help us to thrive. And so I look forward to seeing you on the next show. Have a wonderful evening and take care.